On today's podcast, I'm sharing with you an interview that I participated in as a guest on Frankie Russo's The School of Why podcast.
And I think that's important. I think a lot of times people get overwhelmed because it just feels too big to even start, you know? So I like that you're kind of breaking it down. Now, you said something that I actually am curious about. You said there's a misconception of accountability. Isn't accountability just, having another human that can hold you accountable, or some sort of regulator that is going to hold you to this standard or something along those lines, keep you honest? I mean, where has it gone off the rails as you see it?
I hope you enjoy my chat on the School of Why podcast. Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everybody, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat podcast. I am so glad you are here and so glad that this podcast continues to grow and spread all over the place. Thanks to everybody out there who takes a moment. Thank you. If you are willing to rate this podcast 5 stars, leave a positive review on whatever platform you're listening to, and also sharing it with friends, colleagues, team members, people in your network. That is how good stuff spreads in the world. So thanks to everybody who takes a moment to do that. On today's podcast, I'm sharing with you an interview that I participated in as a guest on Frankie Russo's The School of Why podcast. The School of Why podcast is a place for entrepreneurs, artists, professionals, and any person seeking to connect to their true purpose and passion. Frankie Russo, through his Russo Capital firm, has developed a portfolio of companies across multiple industries, including technology, advertising, marketing, automotive, music, agriculture, publishing, and finance. The beneficiaries of his investments have offices in the United States and India and serve 128 U.S. markets. Russo and his team have led 2 of his companies to become some of America's fastest growing, privately owned organizations for 8 years in a row. The Art of Why, from 2016, Russo's first book, was on Amazon's bestseller list in the self-help category and has been readapted and expanded into the rules-defying Breaking Why. Frankie's highest calling is his family, and he happily lives with his wife and 6 children in Louisiana. Check out the show notes for this episode to link to the School of Why podcast to learn more. I hope you enjoy my chat on the School of Why podcast. But let's take a quick break. Let's pause for a second, and we'll be right back. Hey, everyone. I wanted to take a quick minute to remind you about one of my favorite days of the year that is coming up. Thermostat Cultures Live on Friday, November 4th, 2022. This is a powerful day of development that I host and an opportunity for us all to step back, take a deep breath, and calibrate our thermostats for the road ahead in our leadership roles and the cultures we are creating. This year, this is a hybrid event, and there are limited seats available for the in-person, very cool VIP experience in Columbus, Ohio. And there are also online virtual seats available for those who want to engage from a remote location. As always, I'll be joined by amazing other thought leaders from around the globe, and it'll be a day you won't want to miss. Visit thermostatcultureslive.com to learn more and to reserve your seat or seats for your team.
Welcome back to another episode of the School of Why podcast. Today we've got an incredible guest, Jason Barger. Jason, how are you?
I'm great. Good to be with you, Frankie.
Jason, I know that you recently released your 4th book called Breathing Oxygen. So before we get too into the weeds on this interview, I wanted you to just kind of tell me a little bit about it. And I guess my first question is, what else would we be breathing?
I love it. That's a good question. Of course, we were always breathing oxygen, but really, the book is about a metaphor for and inspired coming out of the pandemic and everything we've been experiencing over the last couple of years.
So this isn't a book about global warming and pollution and whatnot. Oh, thank God, because I was worried this was going to turn into a political podcast, and for obvious reasons, I try to avoid all that.
No, I do as well, buddy. No, it's about what are the
don't want to get canceled this early in the morning.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's about what are those mindsets that we are intentionally kind of breathing in, and what is it that we all know that there are oxygen givers and oxygen takers. You walk into any meeting, any company, any situation, and there's people that kind of fill the room and kind of bring energy to the room. And also we know that, and I think the last couple of years taught us this, that, man, there were times where we needed to breathe in different oxygen. We needed to fuel our mindsets in a way that wasn't leading us down that kind of toxic path of negativity and blame and finger pointing and gossip and all that kind of stuff. So it's really about those kind of 6 key leadership mindsets of how do we breathe that in for ourselves, and then what does it look like to breathe oxygen into other people's, into the cultures that we're trying to create.
That's great. I love that. And are your other books in line with the same kind of mentality of how we can be givers and better servant leaders and things like that? Is that kind of a theme for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a part of who I am, for sure, authentically. And then also, I just think it's the type of work that I'm doing in terms of developing leaders and culture and clarity around mission, vision, and values. That's the stuff that I see a lot of teams and a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations really struggling with, or at least trying to gain clarity on. So each of my 4 books has a slightly different message and angle on this stuff. And my most recent book before Breathing Oxygen is called Thermostat Cultures. And that's really about what is the process we go through to proactively shape the culture we want, not just the culture that we're experiencing.
Interesting. So, one of the things that I always focus on specifically on this podcast when it comes to this idea of why, right, in the school of why. And I have this belief that all of our purpose is the same at like the most basic level. And then from there, it's our passion that helps us kind of dictate how our purpose is going to come out, right? So our purpose, in my opinion, is to be leaders, all of us in different ways and in different rooms. And being a leader means helping others, right? And putting others first. And what happens as a result of that, as you know, is very powerful things come back to you, right? And it's not money, but sometimes it's money, but a lot of times it's other pieces to the puzzle. But it's that passion that can help us kind of decide where we're going to put that purpose. And I don't know how you feel about that. Obviously, you've been doing this, you said 13 years, right? So you've been in this journey of helping others, and that passion you have for helping others and making that a lifestyle. What do you see as like some of some real important things? Maybe it's a life hack or something like that, that you feel like are, if you took one, I know your book has multiple pillars. What did you say is 6 pillars?
Yeah. 6 mindsets. Yes.
What would you say for people that are watching this that maybe they don't have time right now, or they haven't read the book yet? What would you say is a good starting point for somebody who's just an everyday person that is feeling really kind of bogged down from mentally, physically, maybe spiritually from this whole pandemic and everything else? Like, where do you start with somebody like that?
Yeah. So, one of the terms that gets thrown around so much, especially in the world today in teams and organizations, is we talk about, if you read any article right now that's talking about how important culture is and how important purpose and all that stuff that you just were talking about is, one of the terms that gets thrown around is emotional intelligence and how much we as individuals, but then also within the teams and organizations that we serve, that we need to raise our level of emotional intelligence in order to navigate our way through everything we're facing, right? But oftentimes we throw around terms like that, but we don't really take the time to fully
because I mean, emotional intelligence. Yeah. So do you kind of dive into some of the emotional intelligence in your book?
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems like a natural fit. My second book ended up being a little less about just mastering your purpose and more about how do you hack and rebuild strategic emotions, is what I call them, in order to get to that authentic success, right? Because emotions play such a massive role. If you harness them, whether they're good or bad, it can play into it. So tell me, what do you, when you think of emotional intelligence, because there are more than one definition of what it is, how do you define emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so emotional intelligence is that first and foremost, it starts with our ability or inability to recognize how we are feeling and what we are experiencing and what we are seeing from our perspective, right? So in our bodies and in our experience right now, our awareness of what we're feeling and seeing, and then also the ability or inability to recognize that in somebody else. So there's a personal competency side of this, and then a social competency side of it. So I then perceive what I see you might be feeling or thinking and experiencing in this moment. But then emotional intelligence isn't just the recognition and awareness of that. It's then our ability, or again, inability, to use that recognition and awareness to then what's the behavioral response we're going to bring? What's the action we're going to put based on how I know in any given situation I'm feeling and seeing what I'm experiencing, what I perceive you to be feeling, seeing, and thinking. And then what is it that I'm going to do? And so my language, how am I going to calibrate the thermostat? Like, what is the temperature I'm trying to set based on what it is that I'm experiencing? And so your question about a life hack in terms of purpose, I believe, begins with our own recognition and awareness for ourselves and taking time to reflect on, well, what are those things that kind of bring out the best in us? What is it that, what are the things that breathe oxygen into me as a human, as a spouse, as a dad, and then certainly within the work that I'm grateful to get to do in the world, what are the things that kind of bring out the best in me and kind of bring me energy, and also to be aware and recognize what are those things that seem to be kind of stealing my oxygen. What are those things that maybe are limiting beliefs or limiting the air? The air doesn't bring out the best in me. And from that awareness, then I can begin to say, well, which of these do I want to feed more, right? Which path? So that I can begin to walk, I think, to use your language, to walk closer and more in alignment with that purpose. But if I don't even have that recognition and awareness of those things, don't even have that emotional intelligence, then we're walking around kind of in a fog.
Right. Yeah, and that's interesting that you said that, because I talk a lot about this idea of, first and foremost, my most recent talk is called Inauthentic Existence. And that is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm thinking it'll probably be my third book, because it's so relevant right now, right? In this idea of inauthenticity and the way that plays out, and the misconceptions of inauthenticity, and what happens when I show up authentically, right? And if I'm showing up authentically, I got to believe that means I'm showing up breathing oxygen, right? My authentic self is not breathing in all the negative stuff. And a lot of times we got to go all the way back to childhood and revisit who we were before we started breathing so much negative oxygen, as you say. Yeah. So I love that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's about, first and foremost, getting honest. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing here. And then my next thing I usually will step into is taking inventory. And the taking inventory is, okay, like you just said, what breathes oxygen into me, and what's breathing out. And then from there, it's like, okay, whatever is the negative oxygen, or what is it, CO2? What do you call the negative? What is the bad oxygen?
Well,
what do you call it in the book?
Let's just call it
or it's just a lack
of
listener.
Oxygen. Let's just call it pollution. Let's call it. Okay, this is the
pollution.
This is the carbon dioxide, or this is the
what
the image
am I breathing in? Exactly. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the image again, because I think people and listeners think in imagery, right? So I think it's helpful to us. So every day when I wake up, or every day when you wake up, or anybody listening, whether we know it or not, and again, the higher level of emotional intelligence, the more intentional we will become with all this stuff. But we start to recognize every single day we have an opportunity. Do I, kind of go over and put the oxygen mask on for a second and kind of breathe in some good oxygen, things that fuel my mind and help me prepare for the type of person and bring out the best of what I'm trying to do in the world? Or do I, walk over and stand, behind the exhaust from a car and stand there and breathe in that stuff that we all know makes us unhealthy and doesn't bring out the best in us? And yet every single day as individuals, and then also with teams and organizations, we build habits of falling into the trap of kind of staying in a space that really isn't bringing out the best, or mindsets, stories we're telling ourselves, air that we're breathing that doesn't really help our performance. And yet we stay there and we stand there and we keep breathing it because that's the habit we formed.
Yeah, we just kind of accept that this is the way things are, and so it's a big part of your work encouraging people to move away from those things or to change the positions. I mean, what are some things that come to mind? I know for me, I think of sometimes it's a relationship or the way you show up to a relationship.
Yep.
I mean, almost in every scenario, it's going to be something like that. Whether it's a relationship to my job, it's a relationship to a person, their relationship to me. So, I mean, do you talk about like boundaries, or how deep do you go into it in your book as far as like how am I supposed to repurpose or focus away from the pollution, get into the oxygen? Where do you go with that?
Every single chapter talking about these different mindsets, I talk about the mindset of how breathing oxygen every time that we return to clarity, and I talk about clarity as an individual, finding clarity around what is our mission, what is that why, again, the purpose, what is the vision for where we're trying to go, what is the how, so the values of how we're committed to traveling, and then what is the strategy, so based on those things, what is it we're going to do next? So for us individually, but then also, again, this is written in such a way that, and a lot of the work that I do is with teams and organizations that are lacking that clarity as groups and as teams and as entire companies. And so each of these mindsets, whether it's clarity that I talk about, inclusivity, whether I'm talking about mental agility, talking about grit and rest, that really rest is a secret to elite performance. We dive into that kind of mindset around that. And then personal ownership and accountability, and redefining what we even mean by the term accountability that has been hijacked over the years. And so each one of those, at the end of the chapters, it talks about, so what are some actions and behaviors that we inhale to kind of breathe in to help kind of fuel those mindsets? And what are actions and behaviors that we need to exhale and kind of let go of and get away from and move from? So there's personal, suggestions about how we practice this stuff. And then what within teams and organizations, you talk about moving. The way we shape culture is that culture is dynamic, which means it's always changing. And yet oftentimes with our teams and organizations, we haven't identified a strategy around what is that culture that we're trying to create together. And then what are we going to do from a structure perspective? What are we going to put into place to help us create that culture that we're committed to? And then how do we as individuals throughout the ecosystem of our team or organization, how do we breathe oxygen into that over time so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, somebody says, oh yeah, at that company on our team, that's just the way that we do it. And the reality is that's now just become the air that we breathe because of many different tiny little hundreds, if not thousands of millions, intentional little actions and behaviors that have helped shape the culture we want.
Yeah, I always talk about this idea of one degree. Like if you can just change something by 1 degree, over time it becomes a much larger wedge when you're thinking of it like, in a circle of degrees. And I think that's important. I think a lot of times people get overwhelmed because it just feels too big to even start. So I like that you're kind of breaking it down. Now you said something that I actually am curious about. You said a misconception of accountability. Isn't accountability just, having another human that can hold you accountable, or some sort of regulator that is going to hold you to this standard or something along those lines, keep you honest? I mean, where has it gone off the rails as you see it? far as accountability.
Well, even in some of that language that we have become accustomed to using, and especially within teams and organizations, again, it's so commonly used this way that it's become kind of an epidemic that we only talk about accountability in the sense of when we're going to quote unquote hold someone accountable. And so accountability becomes a slap on the wrist or I'm only going to talk to you, Frankie, when I have something.
I need you to help me not do bad.
You didn't hold up your end of the bargain in our relationship. And so I'm going to quote unquote hold you accountable to that. And so I'm going to call you out. And so
it ends up having a connotation of being wrong, and then maybe in turn having a result of shame.
That's right.
As far as like the nature of the relationship.
Absolutely. Within relationships, when we, accountability is only about the things that we let each other down with. Within teams and organizations, the people say we don't have any accountability because, or this negative sense of it because it's all about catching people doing it, how they didn't live up to their end of the bargain. And the reality is, more times than not, we are more accountable to one another than we are less accountable to each other. And so the healthiest relationships and the healthiest teams and organizations, they understand and they redefine and have a better association with what that term accountability even means. And so we recognize and celebrate all of the ways in which we are accountable to each other when we live up to what we said we were going to do. And therefore, that doesn't mean we shy away from those moments when we know we can do better and there's opportunity for improvement, but that's not the only time we're going to hear about it. And so there's a place called the Gottman Institute out of Seattle that did this. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, but did this research on healthy relationships and teams and all that. And really what they found is on they could predict with amazing accuracy around what relationship and or team was going to last and which one eventually was going to blow up based on just watching their interactions of the people involved. And what they found was that there was about a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions. Those healthier relationships, which once again recognize, point out, value, name the ways in which they are positively accountable to one another, are the ones that end up thriving and growing and becoming something new. The ones that are in that kind of 1-to-1 ratio, or in some cases even worse than that, where they are again only catching them doing things in the wrong and negative, are the ones that
which
blow
is
up.
It's common. It's
That's
common.
right.
I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, the reality is that business is set up to make money, and so where it gets rough. This happens in our personal lives too, but I think sometimes it's easier to stay positive in a personal life, depending on, who's in your personal life, than this corporate deal, because the corporate thing, everybody kind of signs off on it. So it's like everybody just assumes like, look, we got to go to work. We got to get up and do this deal. We have an objective. It's related to money. And then we're just going to worry about how we're going to live our life outside of this. You know what I'm saying? We're just going to focus on whatever this money can come out of this. Then that's the purpose of me being at work, so that I can just do stuff when I'm not at work. And to be honest, that's why there's such massive burnout, and there's a lot of people just kind of throwing their hands up, especially this whole new generation, right?
I would agree with everything you're saying, and I would lean into, or I guess nudge or challenge us to say that I think traditionally that has been a lot of the mindset. And yet also from context of what we're experiencing right now in the world, and what I'm seeing throughout teams and organizations across industries over the last 13 years, and what statistics and research tell us what's happening right now, is we have a time in which over 30 million people in the last 12 months have resigned from jobs. It's continuing at about a 4 million a month clip. And the U.S. Department of Labor is saying that
where
it's
are they
not
going
anywhere.
Where are they going? Are they not working at all? Or are they just
many are,
work?
what some of the language they're starting to bring to it is not referring to the Great Resignation, but it's becoming kind of the Great Rethink, which means that what is happening is some people, yes, are jumping from one industry to another and are wanting to try something new. Others, two-income families that are rethinking the life that they want to have and are saying, hey, maybe we can make it on one income and we're going to change our lifestyle in some way.
So a nice percentage of it is going down to one person working, one person being there for the kids more.
The traditional kind of work.
Or the dogs, whatever they're into.
In the corporate setting, the traditional work in the corporate setting, again, where the world is different now. We have a gig economy. I mean, just on this call as we were beginning, you were talking about some of the things that you're doing and entering this gig economy that more and more people are able to work remotely and freelance and do stuff.
Yeah.
And so they're rethinking, what is this relationship that I have with work and my life? Mm-hmm. And so where I was going to lean into is that the companies, again, that I'm working with and that I'm a part of, that I'm partnering with, are the ones that are realizing that people just want a job just for money. And even though that's a myth, or that's something that we once believed, a mindset we once believed, all the research is telling us that's not true.
Yeah.
People are leaving in record numbers, and what they're saying is, I want to be a part of something where I'm a part of a more meaningful culture, where I can contribute and be a part of something. I want a place that has a compelling purpose, that has a mission greater than ourselves, and values me as a human being, and helps me with this relationship between the life I want to lead and the ways in which I want to contribute to whatever it is this said company is trying to grow and develop.
Yeah, go keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, what the research and what everything's telling us is, when people don't feel that, they will go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so we're in a great reckoning right now of all the talk about the future of work, we are creating it right now as to what are the types of cultures that we are committed to lead and create as leaders, teams, and companies.
Yeah, it's interesting how people and this whole new generations have come to a place where it's like they've accepted that capitalism is almost like a god, and that if they're going to serve that god or pray to that god, then, which is going to work every day, then they want to make sure that it's the type of god they want to serve. And I know that's kind of over the top talking about it as like a deity, but the fact is that is kind of the deal. It's like, so this whole new generation where we thought of philanthropy as something that we do outside of work once we've made some money or whatever. Now they're like, okay, we want to buy our products from companies that are doing certain things. And so that's their way of philanthropy, is if Target, gives money to the, dogs with 3 legs, then like, I feel good about going to Target or whatever. And then, whatever, same thing with the company. So it's like, okay, I'm looking at my life. I'm 25 years old. I'm obviously not 25, but these new generations, or they're 30 and they're like, man, I got 35 more years of this. I might as well be someplace where I'm making a difference, or they're making a difference, and I'm part of that difference, like you said, and they're willing to take less money for it. And I think that's what's crazy is that now that's the other thing. We're in a whole generation that is okay with having low net worth and high experience net worth. I actually, next week I have the experienced billionaire coming on the show, which actually she has done some amazing things, and I'm actually excited about that one. But when I first saw her book title, I was like, oh God, this is another millennial, Gen Z. All that matters is that you're getting great food pics on Instagram and, traveling, and that's what you need to make sure you don't waste your life not doing. But it ended up being way more purpose driven. But to your point, that's where I think this is going. And it is interesting how just like with consumers, right? Consumers can shift an entire industry when it comes to retail or something like that, right? They when they come together on a mindset, and it's not, obviously they don't all know they're doing it, but as those things move, entire industries are forced to shift, right? And so that's what's happening, I think, almost when you think of an employee as a consumer to the businesses, right? There's enough of them in this mindset that like businesses are going to look very different and continue to look different, So is that, are you kind of helping businesses work through that? Is that a big part of your journey, is helping businesses that it's not really been their focus? They're like, come to you and say, where do I start? Is that one of your deals?
Yeah. I become a partner with places that are realizing that, yes, now it happens to be that they're realizing it needs to be a strategy in terms of their existence. If we want to exist in 10 years, then we ought to have a strategy on how we're developing our people and our culture. And by the way, so there's a return on that investment. But by the way, is that's what people need and want. That's what everybody's telling us. And so if we don't have a strategy or intentionality around, well, what is the culture that we're trying to create in this company? And again, if you want to say it's just about making money and get clear on that and make your boundaries, whatever's authentic for you. And then to your point, the marketplace
not everybody
will dictate.
Not every business has to decide to become like a do-gooder business or helping others.
No.
But what they have to do is be authentic and make sure that that's clear with everyone on the team. So like, I think that clarity of vision and mission is as important as whatever the mission and vision is.
No doubt. And also that your people are participating in it.
Right. That they know what it is.
That's what they truly want. And what are we trying to create?
If you asked everyone
together
in your organization what the mission is of the company, it's not like we're getting hundreds of different answers, right? That's really interesting, man. So when you come in with these companies, I mean, where do you start? If a company's just coming to you or teams coming to you and they're like, or a leader, and they're like, look, I don't really have a lot of direction. I see what you're saying. I see the trend. I want to be a part of it. Where do I focus on just getting everybody to breathe in oxygen and help everybody by coaching them on how to do that? And that's maybe part of it. I mean, what do you do with companies that they think culture is, happy hours and pool tables and ping pong tables and dogs at work and stuff? I feel like that's kind of had a hangover, right? Especially now that we're like, well, just have my dog at my house. What do you do with that? This misconception of culture, right? Because I think everybody's kind of having to rethink that.
Totally, yeah. And what first I'd say is that I'm not the best fit for everybody. So there are companies that come to me, and if they are in the mindset of thinking that culture is just ping pong tables and jeans Fridays, and that they just need more of that, and that's the answer, then I probably am not the best fit for them. Jeans Fridays and ping pong tables are an outgrowth of a culture. It's not the culture. Culture is dynamic, which means it's being created moment by moment every single day by everyone throughout your ecosystem on the way that you think, the way that you act, and the way you interact. And so ping pong tables and Jeans Fridays and whatever are just strategies to help with that ecosystem around thinking, acting, and interacting. But if you have a natural desire that you want to have greater alignment with your people on what is that desired culture we're trying to create, then I'm a good fit for you. And what that really begins is by me listening and trying to understand. It's not about me coming in from the outside and telling you what your culture ought to be, because it doesn't matter. And and who the hell am I? And it doesn't matter that way. But what I am is a partner in helping you understand what is the culture you're trying to create and getting clear on that. And then from there is a culture shaping process to then say, all right, based on that, well, how are we going to lead the kind of change that we want? And so how are we going to develop our own thinking perspective on creating that culture every day? How is it we're going to structure from an organizational development side of things, how we hire, how we onboard, how we do performance evaluations, how we identify emerging leaders throughout and develop their thinking, acting, and interacting so they build habits that we want, and we want to retain great people. All of those things are intentional strategies that get deployed based on clarity around the mission, vision, and values and the culture that we're committed to creating together. Then ongoing coaching and developing that's the breathing of the oxygen. is once we get clear on all that and we understand, again, now I'm layering in different ones of my books, but once we understand the temperature of the thermostat culture we're trying to create, if we don't know what temperature is that we're aiming for, then anything goes, right? And our culture becomes more like a thermometer that just goes up and down depending on who's in the room. A thermostat regulates it. So once we get clear on the structure, then from a leadership perspective, we're going to have to breathe oxygen into it over time to build the thinking, acting, and interacting to support it.
When I'm guessing there needs to be a cadence, right? So I worked with the entrepreneur operating system with one of my companies for a long time, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, with traction and whatnot. But there's some just great ways that they're able to take 5 years and bake it down into a day or 90 minutes, and that was really helpful for me. Is that some of the stuff that you will get with as far as like creating something that can be duplicated and has that like ongoing. We're constantly having at least a little bit of time each week or each day to work on the business instead of in the business, or on the culture instead of in the culture.
Absolutely.
Is that part of it?
We've got to get intentional about if that is truly, if we're committed to this future culture we're trying to create, then we've got to reverse engineer it and begin to understand, well, then what does that look like? What are we going to intentionally do individually and collectively over the next 30 days? Over the next 60 days, 90 days, over the next 3 years, 5 years, what is our intentional strategy to then anchor this culture that we're trying to create in everything that we do, so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, people in this company say, oh yeah, at this company, this is just the air that we breathe. Well, it is now, but we've changed the entire ecosystem by very intentionally breathing new oxygen into it over years.
And in part, sometimes you have to learn this by having breathed in pollution and knowing where the pollution is. And it's a journey, right? So it takes time, but it definitely, most importantly, takes willingness, I think, and honesty and open-mindedness. And so I love what you're saying there. One last question I had before we go. Building a team is so important, and I put a lot of emphasis on that because I would never be where I am without the team that I have. Like, no matter how you split it,
no doubt,
you got to have a team. Even if you're a solopreneur, you still have a team around you that you're utilizing. So, is that a big thing now too? Do you believe that it's better to hire for people that you, at least from what you can tell during maybe the interview process or the getting to know them process, that the priority is, are they capable of being a part of this culture and being a part of what we want to breathe in, more so than what their expertise are or how much experience they have in whatever tactic they're going to be delivering at the business or on the team?
Yeah, we're getting more and more sophisticated with our hiring practices, we meaning globally, of understanding that hiring is a two-way street. And so they are as much interviewing us as we are interviewing them, and especially in an employee market that we're in right now. And again, with all the people out there that are asking the question of, the number one question they're asking is, in every job interview and every job fair right now in the world, the number one question people are asking is not, tell me what you do as a business. It's not, tell me what the role is that I might be hired for. It's not, tell me what my compensation is. It's, you tell me about your culture. Tell me about your culture, because I want to, the two-way street is, as the potential person maybe accepting your offer, if you offer it, I want to know, do I feel like this is a cultural fit for me as a human? And at the same time, we as organizations are getting more sophisticated in asking questions and the process of hiring, of making sure that we're hiring for cultural alignment, not necessarily, I think culture fit gets thrown around, but I think culture alignment means that we're in alignment of what we're trying to create together. And do we both kind of opt in to bringing our gifts and strengths to try to lead that and set that temperature for the long term? And then again, it's not just about hiring, it's from the very beginning of that, empowered people into our cultures, is now we're getting even better and more sophisticated, that onboarding is not an orientation. It's not a
Right.
one-day thing. So culturally aligning is something that never stops throughout a team or organization.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this is a lot and really good. I'm excited about how this went today, and I appreciate you coming on because this is I know you got a lot of stuff going on, and one thing I was curious about, where is the book already published and out on the at the stores, or is it about to be out?
I'm thrilled to announce that it just launched on August 2nd, and so you can get it wherever it is that
Awesome.
you get books. But really exciting to announce that it was the #1 new release on Amazon in business and organizational learning and workplace culture just last week. So
Wow.
it's getting a tremendous response, and
Congratulations.
and
That's really cool.
really cool to see that it's not just an idea that people are enjoying, but that the actual content is resonating and adding value to people and teams and organizations.
I love it. Awesome. And then I'm guessing you have a site as far as if I want to learn more about the speaking or whatnot, if we want to book you for an event.
Yeah, if you go to jasonvbarger.com, Jason V as in Victor, jasonvbarger.com, and then on social media, it's just at jasonvbarger.
Gotcha.
Track me down.
Got to have that V in there because there's some other Jason Barger coming
That's
up.
right, man. There's somebody else out
the
there.
worst. Yeah,
That's
there's
right.
another Frankie Russo up in Jersey. He's a radio host, and it's a constant battle with that guy for SEO results. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
That's right.
Anyway, this has been awesome, man. Thanks so much for being on the School Wide podcast, and I'm looking forward to continuing to run into you, especially out there in the speaker world. And anything I can do to help. Loved your content. Can't wait to read your book.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.